Welcome to the Launching Neurodivergent Teens into Adulthood podcast. I'm Crystal Wagner. I'm a life and parenting coach, and I'm a late diagnosed autistic ADHD mom of two neurodivergent young adult daughters, and I help moms launch their neurodivergent teens into adulthood with confidence and grace. This podcast is born out of life experience. What I've learned in my coaching practice has been so valuable in our parenting journey, and I want to share that with you. In this episode, you'll hear my story and where I'm coming from. You'll know what to expect from this show, and you'll hear my heart so you'll know why this is so important to me. I want to start with our story. We've homeschooled from the very beginning, so we have almost 17 years of homeschool experience. Our youngest daughter is a senior this year. She'll graduate in May, and that'll be the end of our homeschool journey. I always said that I knew we did things a little differently, but I didn't know why. It wasn't until their high school years that we started to unravel all of these onion layers to find all the ways that they learn differently, that they experience the world differently, and the way that they needed me to show up for them. I'd said early on that I knew that one of my daughters would have been placed on ADHD medication if she were in a traditional school setting. Never really stopped to think about why I would say that, but not think about the needs that she had. We just compensated. We did things differently. She was bouncing on an exercise ball while I read lessons to her. We went outside and they ran around while I was reading or while they were answering math facts. We just compensated and did things that they needed in order to be able to focus and to learn effectively. It wasn't until they were in high school and they started doing more independent work, needing to be in settings where they couldn't always compensate that way, that we started to think, what else is going on? So we had them tested, and diagnoses came back as ADHD, autism, anxiety for one, and ADHD, dyslexia, and anxiety for the other. These diagnoses have helped them to receive the accommodations that they needed as they pursue standardized testing, as they go into a college setting, and as they're transitioning slowly into the workforce. The biggest questions that we had were, how do we help them thrive and be successful? And what boundaries do we need to have in place so that I can maintain the emotional bandwidth I need to have so I can support them, and also so that they can develop the skills that they need to thrive in the world that isn't made for them. They needed to learn some skills, and yet they need support that's a little different than what we typically hear about. There's a lot of parenting advice out there, and a lot of it does not apply directly to parenting a neurodivergent teen. A lot of the advice is still good, and we can still take that in, but the way that we actually apply it, it's a little different. I distinctly remember the workshop that I was in, listening to a parenting coach talk about using love and logic and how she worked with a mom of an ADHD boy and what advice she told this mom. And I was sitting there as a newly certified coach and going through this experience with my daughters, and I was thinking, that's not right. Something about that is not going to work for us. So I started just testing out how can I help my daughters? How can I help them be prepared? And what I was experiencing was that they were trying to step up and they weren't being very successful. So as a type 1 concerned mom, I overstepped. I got in and I micromanaged and I offered help, but it wasn't in the way that they needed it. But as I learned more about coaching, as I learned to use those strategies with my clients, I started using them with my daughters too. And it was amazing the difference that we saw. Instead of them pushing back and our relationship taking a nosedive, like when I was overstepping and micromanaging, when I showed up as a coach, I learned how to truly listen. They felt seen. They felt heard, and they saw that I was there to help them, but in a way that gave them the agency, gave them the ability to be responsible for themselves. The most important thing was that I learned how to be responsible for myself. I learned how to let them take responsibility for their own actions. And when we started meeting in the middle is when the beauty came about. I became a supportive space. I was learning how to help them by offering prompts, things for them to think about, and a safe space for them to process through, how do I want to do this? They were able to step up and say, yeah, this is my responsibility, and this is what I want to do about it. Each week on this podcast, you'll learn simple tools for emotional regulation, communication skills, and creating that peace in your home without losing your mind or your relationship with your teen. We'll have real life examples. I'll share what's happened with us. I will be sharing it from my perspective. This is what I've done, the mistakes that I've made, and I still make them because this parenting journey is long and hard, and there's a lot that we have to learn as we go. I will be sharing a little bit from my daughter's perspectives. I do have their permission to share that, and I will be sharing it in a very careful way so that I can still respect who they are and the lives that they're leading. But you will hear real life examples, which will give you practical tips, practical tools that you can use and implement in your own home. As I said, sometimes I'll tell you what I did and what you shouldn't do so that you can be thinking about that and maybe I can avoid some of that pain. But I'll also be teaching you many of the coaching skills that I use with my clients and with my daughters that help us to have that relationship where it's a safe space for both of us to learn, and it just provides the foundation that they need. What you won't find on this podcast is a one-size-fits-all solution. Very rarely will I say everyone should do X, Y, Z, because I don't know your family. I don't know your children. Anytime you meet somebody who's neurodivergent, you've met somebody who's neurodivergent. All the mix of what comes into play makes every person unique. What I need to thrive is very different than what each of my daughters needs to thrive. So I will offer you some things to think about, some strategies and techniques that you can try, and you'll have to experiment a little bit to find what works best for you and your family. I'm not a counselor or a therapist. I'm not a psychologist. I cannot treat and diagnose. But what I am here to do is to teach you the coaching skills that I have learned that can help you to improve your relationship and to provide support for your neurodivergent teen as they are transitioning into this new time where they're going to be taking responsibility for themselves. My heart in this is that I have seen how powerful coaching is for myself, for my daughters, and for my clients. I've worked with over 100 clients. And most importantly, I have coached both of my daughters. With their permission, they have asked me to help them think through situations. I come at it with a coaching mindset and with the same techniques that I use with my clients. I've experienced the healing that can come in relationships from listening instead of telling, from being present and available instead of problem solving, and for providing space to work through solutions. My biggest honor has been when my daughter, who we really struggled through her high school years with our relationship, came to me in college and said, "Mom, actually, I like the way you coach better than the coach I've been working with. Will you coach me this summer?" That was a huge honor to both the maturity she had developed through working through with a coach, the maturity I had developed as working on my own self as a coach and as a person, and allowing both of us the space that we needed to heal. It is a privilege and honor to share what I've learned with you, and I hope that you will take away something from each and every episode that you can put into practice right away. I would love to hear how it goes for you. I would love for you to email me or leave me a message. Leave a comment below the video or in the podcast app. And I have a request from you. I would love it if you would subscribe, leave a rating and review so others can find the podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, leave a thumbs up and a comment so that the algorithm can help this podcast find the people that really need to hear this. And most importantly, I would love it if you would share this with a friend. Do you know someone who has a neurodivergent teen? Would you help spread the word and tell them about the podcast? It's an honor to be here with you. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week.